Let's talk to Jamie Jenkins. He is political and economic commentator about junior doctors. They're demanding another 30% pay rise. We know that they got 22% pay rise and no changes to their working conditions or no reform proposals. That was decided by Wes Streeting, the health secretary previously. Jamie, are they greedy or do they have a point?
Well, this dispute's kind of a long-running one, actually, Peter. So if you go back to 2008, what they're kind of demanding is wage increases over the last couple of years to try and put them back to where in real terms, that's when you adjust for inflation, it would have been back in 2008. Now, the issue you've got, Peter, is that throughout the kind of 2010 onwards, when we had austerity into the kind of the Tory government with the Lib Dems to start with, public sector pay rises were quite low, and they were lower than inflation, and private sector pay awards weren't very high either. So the vast majority of people across the country throughout that decade were worse off in real terms when you look at their wages. But what the unions are trying to demand now is to go back, say, 17 years ago in terms of where they were. But it's just totally unrealistic in terms of what they're demanding. They've had a good pay increase in the recent round. Wes Streeting is caging and giving them that. But the issue you've got here is that they're giving them the wage increases recently, Peter, so they're coming back for more. And if they give them another massive pay increase, so they're going to keep coming back for more. I think the difficulty the unions have is that many of the junior doctors now knew what they were signing up for when they took these waging, this kind of the wages that they're on. So they never signed up for 2008 wages. So to try and think they can go back there, I think is just ludicrous.
Yeah, I think we'll see what happens with all of that, and if they get any more money, which I don't think they should get, but if they get any more money, there absolutely has to be reform of those working practices. Another big thing happening today is Thames Water have been fined 122.7 million, their biggest ever penalty. Will we see any reform in terms of how they do things? They've whacked up the water bills recently. I know I'm a Thames Water company because customer, because I absolutely have to be. There's no alternative. There's the monopoly in all of that, obviously, and like many people, my water bill has gone up, and of course it doesn't come any faster or any colder, and of course Thames Water have been fined for very obvious reasons, because of pollution and because of putting effluent and so on into rivers and the sea.
Yeah, the water system in the UK is one of the biggest scandals we've had over the last 30 years. Obviously, we had privatisation back in the day, and you're right, it's kind of a monopoly across different parts of the country. There's no option. If you're not happy with Thames Water, you can't go somewhere else and get your water supply from. And this just smacks of failure from Thames Water. And you're right to point out the recent price increases. So the inflation figures that we had a couple of weeks ago, Peter, the biggest driver of that increase in inflation, which will actually cause the Bank of England probably to slow the interest rate declines, was water bills. They've gone up 26% in 1 year. That's the biggest increase on record to at least the 1980s when we started collating this data. And Thames Water, along with many, many other water companies, are a big factor in all of that, Peter. And ultimately, big dividends have gone to the shareholders for the last 20, 30 years. Investment hasn't gone in. They got massive debts. And ultimately, it's the consumer paying. They're saying these fines won't be paid by the customer, but ultimately, when a business is being run, if the fine comes in, they'll probably whack up prices at some point in the future.
Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Jamie Jenkins, thank you, political and economic commentator, joining us there. Thank you, Jamie.